All right, let's get started with the Franklin Special School Board meeting for the month of June, June 13th. We will now turn it over to Dr. Erickson.
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome and good evening. We appreciate our instruction out front, but we're excited that that's happening. So if you'll please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As always, before we get started with the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. Thank you. Since we did all of our birthday cards and all of our honorees at the last couple of board meetings, we do not have any good news awards tonight, so we will go right into public input. There's a podium there. If there's someone here for public input, you may approach now. Seeing no one for public input, we declare that it is closed, and we will go into our reports, presentations, and discussions, starting with Dr. Decker.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the instructional technology specialist to join me for the Tnl Spotlight tonight as we take a look at the results of the Virtual Learning Perception Survey.
Dr. Decker said, this was sent to the families who were in virtual learning at the end of the year. That was about 500 students at the time. And so of those 500, we had a 35% response rate to the survey, which is really good because we feel like that is a solid representation of the overall group's feelings. We designed this survey to give us a maximum amount of feedback in the fewest questions possible. And so tonight we're presenting on questions that would be of particular interest to the board. You can see the first question here, one of what we felt was a very important question for you to be aware of. It says, reflecting on the virtual educational experiences this year, my child's learning, and then the parents would respond, either did not meet my expectations, met my expectations, or exceeded my expectations. As you can see, 91% of our families reported that we either met or exceeded the expectations, with about 40% reporting we exceeded expectations. That's a cause for celebration, especially walking into something that was very unknown to everybody.
This next slide reflects the 3 greatest benefits of virtual learning that our families found. So in those top 3, we found that through the survey, school years and in life skills.
All right, so we were also interested in how our families felt the quality of our virtual learning program went over. From a scale of 1 to 6, with 1 being the lowest quality and 6 being the highest, about 92% of our families indicated a 4 or greater, which is definitely a celebration for us. Here is that same information broken down by grade level, so you can see that most grade levels had a quality score of a 5, with 8 being a 4, still above average. So we were very pleased with this information.
So Dr. Cook just reported on what families stated were the greatest benefits of virtual learning. We also asked them what the biggest challenges were. And as you can see here, there was a tie for both the greatest challenge and the second greatest challenge. What was reported as the greatest challenges were supporting my child's social and emotional growth at home and my child developing friendships and peers. You can see the overlap between those two responses. And this validated what we already believed would be the case. But what was interesting is it just over half, 65%. That was a lower number than what many of us anticipated would be reported on that category. Tied for second was supporting my child's academic growth at home and developing routines and procedures. Also a lot of overlap there. As you can imagine, if a family had a challenge developing a routine and procedure, that played on the academic support as well. The implications for next year, as we begin planning, even though we aren't going to be in virtual, it just validates our belief that social emotional. Here this week, actually, we're bringing Joelle Hood back into the leadership retreat to work with our leadership team on social emotional strategies. We are using a program, a digital curriculum program called Quaver, to support our guidance counselors in instructing students with social and emotional strategies. And we're also looking at some other related programming that might be possible for students this coming school year.
So this slide gives you an idea of how the virtual learning broke down by grade level. We thought you might be interested to see. Give you a chance to take this information in. Fairly even, except for second grade came out a little bit ahead. And now we'd like to share with you some direct quotes that parents and guardians took the time to write for the survey. And I have to say, there were quite a few of these, and we definitely appreciate that the respondents took the time to write them and to be so reflective about them when we've read and discussed every single one. And we hope now that we're sharing with you a cross-section that, as we've mentioned, not only celebrates the successes, but shows the areas where we can enhance our instruction and our support. First, when I say that virtual school met my expectations, it did. However, it far exceeded what my other son received in another school district. Seeing my older son's experience with nearly all canned/purchased learning content, I appreciate that there was live instruction. This truly is what I expected. My son really suffered from the lack of social engagement. I wonder if there might have been opportunities for kids to build on relationships through shared experiences with projects or even more casual time spent together. I think this was a tough year on everyone. My biggest question is whether he'll be on par academically with his in-person peers next year. All said and done, I'm thankful that we had the option this year and appreciate the measures FSSD took to make live instruction happen.
This slide references the blend with virtual and on-campus students working together. There's great interaction and opportunity to remain involved even if online. And it quotes, "Our child's teacher was exceptional. She remained cheerful in the face of every challenge. She adapted to virtual school wonderfully, and I feel my son has done very well despite all of the challenges of the virtual learning format. Our child's teacher did a really fantastic job with the virtual program. They were very organized and always had a good plan in place for their virtual students. The virtual kids were never an afterthought. They also did a great job of having the virtual and on-campus students work together on various assignments throughout the year. This helped my child have some much-needed interaction with peers.
So here, you're already starting to hear some of the themes come out that came through the questioning, and in this open-ended responses, that is a great explanation of what they meant by their answers on those other questions. So the first one here, you're also going to hear that same kind of theme come through. I was very impressed with the program and the rollout of it so quickly. It did take a little while to adjust, and my child did experience difficulties with keeping on task at times, but I think she really has the hang of it now. We do want in-person school next year for the development of friendships, as well as the greater benefit of some in-person attention from teachers. My daughter was diagnosed with ADD, and I do believe that in-person instruction may help keep her on task and better organized next year. I do think this has been a fantastic experience and may help her more than we realize in future years. And you'll see at the bottom, we also slipped in another one that said, my 2 grandchildren were in a different school system, and the FSSD virtual program was by far superior.
That's good to hear. All right, some more for you. The FSSD did the absolute best in an almost impossible situation. I don't feel her education suffered, just her social skills. There is nothing you can do about that in a global pandemic. Thank you. We are so grateful you implemented such a successful program, which should be a model for others to follow. Technology support was impeccable, as was the education provided to our child, despite the circumstances. We are grateful and proud to be in the FSSD. I have been thoroughly impressed with the quality of education my child has received throughout this virtual learning experience. I am thankful for the opportunity to keep my child at home during the pandemic. I am also thankful that mask protocols are being thoroughly enforced when my child was required to go to school for testing.
And we'll wrap it up with a final quote, and just to reiterate some of the takeaways: our continued focus on social emotional learning, the continued focus on the technological skills that Dr. Cook mentioned were brought to the forefront and were enhanced, and also the knowledge that we are able to adapt and adjust as needed and put students and families first. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone involved in the virtual schooling at FSSD and all the wonderful teachers and school staff. We know this was a very challenging process. Yes, there were small bumps in the road, as there would be, especially at the beginning of virtual learning when all of us were trying to figure out what works, but the overall effort was excellent, and my child was able to excel in these circumstances. And we thank you for your attention. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes?
I don't really have a question, but I have a comment. I do want to say thank you to everyone involved. And honestly, the way FSSD handled virtual learning starting in March of 2020 was amazing and incomparable. And I just want to thank everybody, because that my child was involved in that March. When it went virtual and everyone was closed for the rest of the school year, and his teachers were genuinely concerned for the kids, and they were touching base with them daily. All the teachers were, and that was above and beyond. And I just am so proud to be a part of our district that continuously shines and continuously goes above and beyond. So thank you, guys.
I just have one question. I appreciate all that she said, and I appreciate the feedback. I take it there was also some negative feedback. Any thought about anything we learned from that?
Well, I think one of the main pieces with relation to that was, for some students, the social emotional piece was difficult. I think that stood out. Making friends, how to handle that part of it. I think that if there's anything else that comes to mind, it's that sometimes it's difficult to manage when there were students who were in person and students who were virtual or remote. But, you know, I think that part was to be expected. And when comments did mention that, it also said, but we figured it out as we went along. It was mostly familiarization.
What was represented
quick question for you. In the responses that we received, were any responses from people who started out virtual and then transitioned back into the in-person?
This went to students who were part of the program was it April that this went out?
Early April.
Okay.
I just want to say thanks also to all the teachers. I know we've said it enough, but we know lots of other districts that also struggled with virtual, and I was really proud of how we did it. My daughter was a virtual teacher in Knox County, so I heard a lot of her stories. So thank you for all your hard work. And I think what we heard from me just reiterates why we really want kids in school, which is what we talked about last August, as many kids as we can have in school. We want them in school because we know that that's what's best. And so I think these comments just reiterated that. Even though they did well, probably academically, there's a whole other part of school that's just as important to the development of a child. So it's nice to get that kind of feedback.
I think these results also speak greatly to the high quality of our materials that we have. All of our district resources have those online components, and I think the fact that we were able to do this without having to do a canned curriculum came out in our survey results as well. So that was a big highlight for us that we were very excited. We know able to use those online pieces that they may have used as much value in those.
Do we have will share this information with teachers? We're so encouraged by the insight and information that we've received from this.
Absolutely. It has been shared with the school administrators, and we can be sure to reiterate again at Leadership Retreat so that they'll have this presentation as well. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? Thank you, excellent job. Dr. Esslinger, construction report.
Well, you have your monthly construction report in your board packet, and this month it's a two-pager. That ought to give you
It is.
an inkling of how much is going on in our district right now. We're at our limits. Sometimes I'm wondering if for all this stuff that's going on, there's a lot happening. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain those at this time.
Did we have a start date for our partnership with the city? Have we moved that far in the continuum? I saw that, the amount and those other details, but I didn't see a start date on.
Yes, I believe the notice to proceed is set for July 1st.
Okay.
So that's the date where the contractor who has awarded the bid can start to mobilize. It should be soon after July 1st.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Dr. Esslinger? As he mentioned, it's a two-pager, so there's a lot going on. Thank you, sir. Ms. Bell, NSBA Advocacy Institute.
The NSBA Advocacy Institute was virtual, and a couple of the classes that I took were building the teacher pipeline, recruitment, retention, and professional development. I look forward to having a conversation with Dr. Snowden and Ms. Bishop about that. And another that I took was the homework gap and the education digital divide. And just, again, really encouraging to know that our district not only cares for making sure all of our students have broadband access, but also that we're making sure that all the students are continuing to thrive with the families and with the work that they're doing. And they made a startling statistic. They said 16.9 million children lack high-speed broadband access at home, and that was just so startling to me. Another class that I took, I listened to the various senators that were there, and we had broad, from the 4 senators that spoke, Senator Collins from Maine, Senator Haynes from Connecticut, Senator, can't think of the other two, but it was just real encouraging that their eyes are laser focused on public education and the care that they can provide for their students within their districts. And it was a blessing to hear, because they were both on various sides of the party, how they feel very strongly about public education and the need for us to provide that excellence. And it was also disheartening because we have crickets with our legislators, and so it was just a renewed focus to make sure I get back on my letter writing and send some very kind but firm letters to our legislators, just to let them know that, i.e. our U.S. senators and representatives, that we need their laser attention, and they need to hear what our best practices are in this area. And then one other thing was they had a pretty phenomenal statistic that went out where they also used bipartisan support in hearing from constituents on the need for not just putting broadband as a priority, but for increased investments within public school education. So very interesting, and if you guys have any questions or if you want me to go over any particular parts, I have access to the information until July the 23rd, I think. So thank you for letting me participate and attend that.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Bell? All right, thank you. Approval of the board agenda. Is there a motion? Ms. Newman, is there a second? Dr. Barker, any discussion? All in favor? Approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Mr. Townsell, is there a second? Ms. Bell, any discussion? All in favor? Business before the board, Dr. Snowden.
Yeah, first item is continuation budget due to the fiscal year officially ending on June 30th. The administration recommends board approval of a continuation budget in order to operate until the new fiscal year budget is adopted. We hope that will be in July. The continuation budget does not allow for new expenditures that may occur in the next fiscal year. All expenditures that extend into the next fiscal year in this continuation budget are based upon the current budgeted amounts in all categories. We recommend approval.
All right, is there a motion on the continuation budget?
Motion to approve.
Ms. Bell, is there a second? Mr. Townsell, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, sir. Dr. Snowden.
Yes, the second item is ESSER 3.0. In March, the district received notification of the allocation of $2.9 million from ESSER 3.0 funding. These allocations to districts across the state were significantly greater than the amounts for the previous ESSER funding, 1.0 and 2.0. Members of the leadership team began to discuss possible expenditures of these funds based upon district needs and the guidelines from the U.S. Department of Ed. We also requested input from the school administrators and their advisory teams composed of teachers, staff members, and parents regarding their ideas for consideration. We also sent a survey to all parents in the FSSD to garner their thoughts and ideas related to possible expenditures. We have included a summary of the survey results, and you get a complete summary and a PowerPoint presentation by Dr. Decker and Dr. Esslinger in a few minutes. The ESSER 3.0 spending plan, once approved by the Board of Education, must go through the Tennessee Department of Education approval process as well prior to going on to the U.S. Department of Education. Since part of the proposed plan does include some additional personnel to help support intervention for our students, we would like to move forward to have those individuals secured and trained early in the school year. We got notice today that we can delay our application until the end of August, but to me that really, if you're looking at hiring people, if you put it off till then hiring, and especially any professional development for those individuals, would be impossible to start the school year and receive the effectiveness from those individuals. So that's the reason that we would like to be able to have this proposed plan approved. Now the state may make some changes or ask us to make changes, and we would bring it back to you. But this, we believe this, we put a lot of thought in this, got some great input, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Decker and Dr. Esslinger for the presentation, and then we would recommend approval of the proposed expenditures.
Thank you, Dr. Snowden. We have a presentation of expenditures on the board, and as Dr. Snowden said, this is round 3 of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. If you recall, back in March, we presented a basic budget for the round 2, ESSER 2.0, and this is our significantly more, a good bit more of money for ESSER 3.0. The total allocation is $2.974298 million. There is a requirement that we have 20% of that to be set aside for learning loss attention. So 20% of that equals $594,860 to round, and it has to be allocated specifically for services and items that would address learning loss that may have occurred during the COVID shutdown. The district leadership team sought feedback from our administrators in our schools, who in turn turned to their faculty, their staff, and their advisory councils to get some feedback on what they thought was of great need for this funding. As a result of this feedback, the following funding categories were identified, and these are in no particular order. The asterisk next to the funding category on the screen indicates that it does qualify as a learning loss expenditure, part of that 20% that I previously mentioned. So social emotional learning and mental health supports for students, academic intervention in reading and math for students, student technology and devices, fine arts, enrichment and STEAM programs, transportation needs, as well as school security needs, extra paraprofessional help for students to be supported academically, professional learning for educators to support the student learning, building infrastructure needs, and additional supports for special education. We also thought it important to get parental input and feedback on the spending of this pot of money, and the survey was sent to parents on June 7th through a Blackboard Connect link, and it closed June 11th. There were 4 questions, and we had 765 responses with a 31% response rate. And that's a pretty good response rate for such a small window, relatively small window. It's a good response rate. And Dr. Decker will now begin to review these survey results from our parents.
Thanks, Dr. Esslinger. You'll see on this slide, we broke out survey results, the top areas to address according to the respondents from both the English survey and the Spanish survey. There were a few slight differences. In blue, you will see the priorities that overlapped. And those were academic interventions in reading and math for students were mentioned in both surveys, or were prioritized in both surveys, as were social emotional learning and mental health supports for students. And you heard in our previous presentation again how we reaffirmed how important those are. You can see also in the English survey, priorities were fine arts, enrichment, and STEM, and extra paraprofessional positions to support students academically. in the Spanish survey highlighted were school security needs and student technology and devices. And you'll see several times in this survey feedback we've received that things that we already have in place or initiatives we already have in place that we are going to communicate even more about those pieces. And an example would be student technology and devices, because as you probably recall, this year we became one-to-one with a device in all grade levels.
Okay, I'm not trying to change the subject, but we are one-to-one now. Are we looking at the potential, because just based on what Alina Bell was talking about having internet at home, are we looking at options? Do we need to consider options for extending that, like the take-home hotspots?
We are going to maintain a supply of hotspots, and so we'll evaluate on a case-by-case basis if a family would need access to that. Yes, thank you. Another question that we asked on the survey was if parents or guardians had other recommended spending categories that we had not listed. And so we're sharing with you here the top 3. Those were after-school activities, food and culinary services, including enhanced nutrition and free school lunches, which are already in place through the USDA through next school year, and teacher pay. This is again an example of some areas that we do have in place as far as enhancement, and we are going to continue to communicate as effectively and openly as we can. To the statement, the FSSD should allocate funds to address students' academic needs by providing additional tutoring and intervention in grades K through 8, both during the school day and after school. You'll see that the respondents were able to select on a scale of 1 through 5 their agreement with this statement, and they supported this decision with regard to funding. This final slide gives you an idea of, out of the 594 who chose to answer this question, who participated in the survey. This information is something that we will have to share when we submit our ESSER 3.0 application, and we need to ensure that we have consulted all stakeholder groups. So this gives an outlook as far as that. And we are happy to take your questions.
Okay, on the question about additional tutoring and intervention, was it worded free of charge, or was it just worded provided?
Exactly as you see it here.
Okay.
So are you going to go over this sheet as well? Or no, that's just for us to have?
That was for your information.
Okay. So this is ESSER 3.0, and this in 3.0 is the 2.9 million, right? But that's a one-time gift from the government. So if we use that for staff or salaries or bonuses, then that becomes a permanent part of the budget? Or are we thinking paraprofessional positions for 1 year only? For academic support? That's what I'm always concerned about when we use it for what do you call that?
Non-recurring.
Non-recurring. So
This
some of
is-
these are non-recurring, some of these are not.
Yes, the interventionists, the paraprofessionals, and this is a 2-year budget. We have budgeted for those interventionists for 2 years. However, we have to be clear with these individuals that at this point, it would be a 2-year position. Now that doesn't mean that they can't apply and become, to take care or take an opening that occurs over the next 2 years, but we're not saying that that's going to be sustainable. I mean, obviously, it's important, and if we can get some additional help for our students for those 2 years, we think that we can make a difference. We tried to stay away from those recurring expenditures as much as possible just because of that fact, because there was no way, I think, in current financial situations that you can say for certain that you would be able to sustain these additional personnel. And quite frankly, we think that we're doing a good job in our interventions and our additional support through our RTI programs and our just other programs that we have, but we think the additional help can be a great benefit for at least these 2 years. But at that point, these positions may have to go away.
Because we are anticipating that this will help bring students who may have suffered learning loss during the pandemic, if they did, which hopefully we didn't have as much of that as some places, that this will bring people kind of back up to help our students if they've had loss. Okay. And do we know, are we spending more than the required amount on learning loss, or are we sticking to the 20%?
I think, I think we're at 25%. The minimum was 20%, but I think if I remember our calculation, we were at 25% of that total amount would be in for learning loss. Is that correct, Dr. Decker? Checking my math.
We're spending $745 on learning loss. We're only required to spend $595.
Yeah, I think we're around 25%. So we felt like we looked at our needs and we felt like that would meet the needs. We weren't trying to get just to the 20% just to meet that threshold. We wanted to see, okay, what can we do? And then when we ended up with our final proposal, then it was approximately 25%.
This feels like, and I'm going to appreciate your institutional history here. It feels like when we embarked on reading coaches and math coaches, and it was before everybody else was, that was a norm for most school districts. I just feel like we're making such a key investment here for our students, and we're going to see the benefits reaped, like we did with the reading coaches, and everyone else has jumped on the bandwagon for that and has seen the benefit. So thank you for this investment.
All right. We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Ms. Bell, is there a second? Ms. Barker, any other questions or comments? Not, all in favor? Motion approved, thank you. Director of Schools report, Dr. Snowden.
Yes, first Summer Learning Camp and Learning Loss Bridge Camp. This was started on June the 1st and continues each Monday through Thursday for the next 4 weeks. Summer Learning Camp is being held at Franklin Elementary School. There are a total of 221 students enrolled for grades 1 through 4, 189 students enrolled in the camp for 5th through 8th graders. Acceptance at the camps was prioritized based on the need to attend and other factors as outlined by the Tennessee Department of Education. I think we're off to a great start. We're halfway through. Our teachers, our paraprofessionals, and students are taking advantage of this additional support. Our summer camp administrators, Dr. Cinnamon Collins and Dr. Star Wallace, former leadership interns, did a great job of planning for the camps and have also worked diligently to ensure the success of these camps. There may be some students that will continue to enroll. I don't know if we've had any at the end of last week or not. Dr. Decker, you remember?
We had some at the beginning of last week, and then we have some students who are only coming for certain weeks. So we had students who were new beginning today.
Our leadership interns who actually, they plan, they're running the program. I talked to them, I visited them a couple of times, but last week when I visited, I said, well, what's your feedback here? And they said, well, when we were interns, the decisions that we saw it in action, but we weren't making those decisions, where now we're having to make those decisions. So they're finding out it's a little more difficult than the leadership intern, but it's great experience for both those ladies, and they're doing a phenomenal job, as well as, like I said, the teachers. And our students, you know, when I was there, they're very engaged. We've had a few discipline issues, but nothing tremendous. But the students are focused, and it's going very well. Any questions about summer learning camp?
What are the hours of the camp, and if we wanted to go by to visit, who would we need to contact?
You want
The hours are 8:30 to 2:30, and you're welcome to contact me if you'd like.
They're not operating, the office for those for the summer camp is not in the main office, but you can check in through the main office and then get to it, but Dr. Decker can help you with that. Young Scholars Institute, well into the camp. This is being held at Freedom Intermediate this year. This will be the second week this week, and last week went great. Certainly like to recognize and thank Ms. Carlton, Ms. Cotton, Mr. Eric Ellison, Ms. Lepping, Ms. Holly Oldstein, the teaching and learning team, and the many teachers and staff for the success of that program. I visited there on Thursday as well. I didn't go into every class, but there were a lot of students there, a lot of great classes, and so we were excited. I think parents were excited for us to be able to offer that program this summer, because we didn't, as you recall, we pretty much couldn't offer it last summer. So it's good to be back. Our enrollment numbers were purposefully, we started out having a lower enrollment just because at that point in time when we had to make the decision, we didn't know what the pandemic would look like by the beginning of the camp. But it's a good number, and I think Ms. Cotton was very happy and very pleased with the number that have signed up and are attending. Any questions about Young Scholars? And FIS seems to be a good place as well. Seamless Summer Food Service Program. For the 12th year, this program's goal is to significantly reduce child hunger over the summer months. The FSSD will host 2 distribution sites on Fridays at Poplar Grove and at Liberty, where each child under 18 may receive 7 breakfasts and 7 lunches. Daily service of meals will also be delivered to bus stops throughout our community Monday through Friday. The program runs June the 1st through July the 23rd, except for the week July the 5th through the 9th. For specific times and delivery locations, the public may contact our Food and Culinary Services Department or access information on our website. Also, board members are invited to ride along with a delivery if you have that opportunity. I know Mr. Blair's done it in the past, maybe Ms. Bell, you have, some others may have. But if you want to do that, you're certainly welcome to join that delivery process. Administrator summer training. School and district administrators will be involved in several different professional learning opportunities. From June the 16th through the 18th this week, our leadership team will be meeting. June 16th and 17th, we'll have the entire team, followed by teaching and learning and administrators in preparation for this next year, including work with Dr. Joelle Hood on the subject of social, emotional, academic learning in the first morning. Protocols moving forward, and our Return to Learn update with Chuck Cagle joining us on the second afternoon for legal updates. June 18th, we'll have an annual required training for our drug-free workplace certification, and you're certainly welcome at any time to drop by over those 3 days, but we especially would like for you to attend lunch on June the 16th at 11:30 to help celebrate Dr. Cook, who is retiring, and she's been smiling for several weeks now. I think her husband may be even smiling more than she is. So if you can join us at any time, please do, and especially for lunch if you have that opportunity. Transition of programs personnel related to Eddie Lane property and eventual movement of programs personnel from the annex. Dr. Esslinger is leading a transition team as we move to some limited occupation of the Eddie Lane property as we begin to vacate the central office annex. The following transitions should occur in July. During the week of July the 12th, Chip, Bo, and the Transportation Department, including buses and drivers, will move to the Eddie Lane property. Additionally, the WEMAC program will be transitioning to their permanent location at Freedom Middle during the week of July the 19th through the 23rd. Due to the move, the WEMAC program will be closed that week and will reopen on July the 26th. And as you might imagine, there is a significant amount of coordination needed to facilitate a smooth transition, and everyone has been extremely supportive and cooperative. Our principals, Dr. Farmer has helped significantly in helping to get the Freedom Middle School area ready, and so we think that's going to be a very positive move. We know the closure of that WEMAC for that week is an inconvenience for parents, and we ask for their understanding. We had several positive emails after that notice went out on June the 10th. There will be other transitions to occur at some point in the future, and we'll keep you abreast of those as the final plans for that transition are developed. Questions on the transition?
I had a quick question. Where will WEMAC be at FMS? What part of the building?
It'll be on this end toward Poplar Grove in that pod. How would you describe? Dr. Farmer would probably best describe it.
Where the new parking
Yeah.
lot, where the new parking lot's being.
Yeah. Yeah, we worked that out. We were not going to impact the Nook space at all. We've still got plenty of room for Nook to occupy their location. Okay, budget process. The April 26th meeting reviewed the operation and for finance administration, teaching and learning. And then on June the 21st, we'll have a combined presentation and review for revenue and personnel. That'll be the primary focus, as well as the cumulative impact of all the budget work. And then hopefully, and if not, we'll schedule another meeting. But at that point in time, we think that we can complete the information you need to adopt the budget in July. But we're certainly open to additional meetings after the June 21st meeting. The district will be closed July the 5th through the 9th. Our July meeting is scheduled for July the 19th. As in the past years, this meeting has been scheduled on the third Monday to provide appropriate time for the administration to make any changes in the proposed budget after the last budget work session. Since the district is closed following the July 4th, the scheduling of that meeting allows additional time to prepare final budget documents. And then Carol has provided updates for conferences through a separate email. That's all I have. Thank you.
Budget meeting is 5:30, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir. All right. Any questions or comments for Dr. Snowden? If not, updates. Dr. Decker, any additional teaching and learning?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Esslinger?
Yes, sir, thank you. We have your typical board packet of HR reports. We do have had I'll call it a June surprise. We had 17% increase in our sales tax revenue over the same time period last year. That's pretty good, double digits. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It's a happy piece of paper.
Thank you, sir. Any announcements from any board members?
I just wanted to share about attending Young Scholars today. It was encouraging, as always. I was sad that I didn't get there in time to sample any of the food that some of the kids were creating. And they were just laser focused on the projects, from programming, where Miss Cotton's son was the teacher, and he is, I don't know if you've ever met him, but he is so passionate about his work, and he shares with the kids about attending MIT, and just, to see, he was thrilled to have guys and girls as participants, and Coach Kelly was equally thrilled about the fishing aspect and just shared with us the stories. And I'm very appreciative with, what was the company? I'm sorry, I'm not a fisherman.
Bass Pro Shops.
Bass Pro Shops provided a fishing rod for every single child to leave with. And I thought that was so generous of them. And he was, again, sharing how he teaches the kids not only to enjoy fishing and make sure they've checked in with their homeowners association, but he also encourages them social responsibility and making sure they clean up around the pond area so that they are good citizens. And he mentioned that he's had numerous kids send back pictures of fish they catch and how they've cleaned up, and that was so encouraging to see that far-reaching benefit. That's such a great life skill. So again, I made sure I tried to thank everybody for their participation in teaching. And the last class that I really enjoyed seeing was Miss Miyake, who is a science teacher, and I'm forgetting the algebra teacher.
Ms. Beeman.
Ms. Beamer, yes. And how they both teach a cooking class and implement their skill set for the young people, and it was so impactful to see how they partner, and they've been doing that for years, and so it was enjoyable to be able to go back and see that.
Also, I had an opportunity to hop on a story bus last week, and if you didn't see the story bus article in the Williamson Herald, I would encourage you to go back, and I thought it was a great article. Of course, it mentions and had a picture of the story bus lady, Miss Smith, Joyce Smith, and there were a lot of kids on the bus when I went by. It's mid-morning, but that's a fantastic program, and I know many of your children visited the story bus when they were in school, so that's continuing, and it's going great. But yeah, take a look at that article if you get an opportunity.
Yeah, I also got a chance to check out the bus today. I drove around the parking lot, Bo. No, I didn't. But it was good. It was really good. The air conditioning was working. It was a really hot day, but it was working, and I was able to watch the kids and talk to the kids. It was good. It was good. Also enjoyed my time at Young Scholars. I too didn't time it perfectly for chocolate, but there's always tomorrow.
Excuse me, you're welcome anytime.
Any other comments from board members? I as well had a chance to visit Young Scholars, Story Bus, and a couple other places, and I always encourage board members, if you can, to participate in our summer activities, our summer programs that we have going on. They're encouraged by our presence, and I'm encouraged by how much we're doing in the summer. So it's amazing that we keep it going, and very well pleased. So thank you. If there are no other announcements, we are adjourned.